Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Mawaya. If you're new here, welcome. We're glad to have you. Welcome to the tribe. Mawaya stands for Meet You Where You Are, and I'm your spiritual theorizer. Welcome back. So, today I want to talk about believing yourself the first time. Okay. So, what do I even mean by believing yourself the first time? Believing yourself the first time, have you ever been in a situation where, you are, let's take the job example. You go into a job, you're excited, then something happens at your job. Either the coworkers suck, the job itself sucks, your supervisor sucks, the customers suck. Something about that job does not sit well with you. And I'm doing this motion because this is you going into a loop. If you want to know more about loops, you can check out my video, Insanity Loops. Or you're in an insanity loop. So something happens where you're at your job and something about it doesn't sit well with you. And maybe you ignore it, you go home, you vent about it to your friends, your significant other, to your pets, to your family. You're venting about it, but then that gives you enough relief to keep going. And you keep going until the next incident happens and you're frustrated, you're depressed, you lash out at people. It's having a negative effect on you. But maybe you're able to suppress it. Maybe you take drink a beer after work. Maybe you just say like, oh, I can't wait for the weekend. Those phrases, something that you're looking forward to some type of relief from this. But at the end of the day, you have not changed your situation. And then it gets so bad that you're basically delaying the inevitable. With the inevitable being that you're going to leave this job eventually, because the same thing keeps happening. And maybe different versions of it, or a multitude, a comorbidity of things happening, and it's going to keep eating away at you until you make a decision. And so usually in this place, this is the bottom of that loop, right? That emotional low stage, which triggers the awareness, like I stated previously, and you're ready to get out of that situation. Well, the only reason why you had to go through that so many times was because you didn't believe yourself the first time. You didn't believe yourself the first time that your boss asked you to work overtime and you're like, okay, I don't want to do it, but okay, I'll do it. And then it happened again, and then it happened again. And you should have believed yourself the first time. So let's go into more detail about what I actually mean by that. So what do I mean by believe yourself the first time? Well, your body will always give you certain cues. It'll be your heart, your intuition, your gut, your emotions, your thoughts. All of these things that are originating from inside of you are going to give you a cue of how you actually feel about a situation. This is your truth. This is why they always say, the answers are within. Literally, you're wearing the answers on your body via your heart, your gut, your thoughts, your emotions. And we just don't listen to them, right? So when you're in a situation such as your job and you're feeling that emotional low, one or more of these cues is going to tell you how you truly feel about it. This information is always with you, and it's with you from the beginning. Okay, it gets louder and louder every time you ignore it, which is why if you watch yourself, the way you cope with your job in this particular example, it gets worse and worse. It may start with, you just dismiss it, you suppress the emotion, the frustration, and the irritation, then it escalates to maybe you're talking to a coworker about it. Then it escalates to you're talking to your family and significant other about it. Then it escalates and maybe you need a drink. And then it escalates and maybe you stop doing your job the way you were hired to do it. And then it escalates and maybe one day you blow up on your boss and quit. Instead of you believing yourself the first time that this doesn't sit right with me. So why don't we believe ourselves the first time? Like, what is it that that keeps us from actually exiting the loop the first time around? You ever heard of this thing called FOMO? Fear of missing out? Yeah. Fear of missing out, meaning in this context of the job, if you were to quit, you're missing out on the salary. If you were to quit, maybe you could have just stuck it out and maybe it would have gotten better. Maybe you should have given it a chance and you just don't know. You have a fear of missing out on something. You feel like you're going to miss out if you quit, if you end up exiting the loop. It's a lie. We do this also because the situation is familiar to us. So because something is familiar, it's predictable. We know how to maneuver in it. We know how to cope with it. So say your boss keeps asking you to stay overtime and you keep giving in, it becomes familiar to you and you get used to coping with that. So again, you have your outlets, you vent, you have a drink, you smoke a blunt, you do something like that to relieve your stress, and then you're ready to go through the loop again. So it's familiar to you. You understand how to cope with it. You don't trust in yourself. You don't trust that you know what's best for you. You don't trust that you have all the answers that you need. You don't understand this connection, this heart, mind, body connection. So you let it continue to pass you by. Okay, so why do we do this? We're scared of the unknown. We don't know what happens if we make this decision. If we actually chose ourselves and chose to love ourselves enough to get out of a stressful situation, we don't know what happens after that. Maybe you don't have a plan. Maybe you've gotten to a point where it's so unbearable and loud, the cues from your body, that you need to exit right now. And you might not have a backup plan. So it keeps you in the loop. So, that is a big thing dealing with your job. It's like, how am I going to pay my bills? Like, this is all I know how to do. I worked on this company for 10 years or something like that, 20 years. So you don't know, you're scared of the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't trust yourself. So this is where the gaslighting comes in. You don't know, you tell yourself that what you're experiencing, you're not experiencing. It's not that big of a deal. And everybody at this point who has turned into an adult and can have a memory of their childhood, of, either a teacher, a parent, an older sibling, somebody older than you, kind of diminishing your experiences and making you feel like what you're going through as a child is not that big of a deal. So you do that to yourself again in adulthood, and you tell yourself it's not that big of a deal. I need to suck it up. I got to pay my bills. I'm just going to rock this out. And you're gaslighting yourself. So know what you're doing, right? You need to know what you're doing. So those are the reasons why we don't believe ourselves the first time. And these things can be very tricky because a fear-based decision, which is something I'm going to talk about on this channel, can be logical. It makes sense logically to not quit your job because you have bills. It makes sense logically knowing that you have a family to take care of, that you can't just up and leave. In this particular example, and this goes for relationships, it logically, say you're in a relationship where it logically makes sense, like y'all get along and everything is pretty smooth, but maybe you just aren't in love. Maybe you just aren't feeling it. It's just not resonating with you anymore. Logically, there's no reason to leave, but your gut and your emotions and your heart and your mind and your thoughts are going to keep yelling at you and get louder and louder every time you choose to suppress how you really feel until you can't ignore it anymore. So these things we have to pay attention to. So now we have to talk about the consequences of if we don't. What happens if you don't believe yourself the first time? The biggest thing is that you waste your time, because the nature of this universe, it will always go towards alignment. We can use water as a way to explain this truth. No matter how you turn water, if it's in a cup or in the ocean, it's going to always search for equilibrium. It's always going to search for a baseline. It's always going to search for alignment, what is natural to it. The same goes for you. You're always going to search for a way to get back into alignment. This is why our emotions are so loud to us and they feel so deep to us personally, is because you're out of alignment. And so you waste your time because you're eventually going to make the decision to exit the loop. You're eventually going to, get out of your situation. But you would have wasted 10, 20 years of your life versus if you believed yourself the first time, you could have saved yourself a lot of emotional turmoil, emotional highs and emotional lows. You could have saved yourself from that. Sometimes it can be dangerous, depending on if you don't leave a situation the first time. If you ignore that first red flag, it can turn into a dangerous situation. Depending on what we're talking about here. We can talk about relationships. If you ignore the first red flag thinking that, this person, I can change them, or I can heal them, or I can do whatever, you might be setting yourself up for failure. You take a side path instead of your direct path to what you truly want in life. So again, wasting time. You take side missions, basically. And it always loops around back to your original path, but you're on a side path now. So you're experiencing things that you didn't even have to experience, all because you didn't want to believe yourself. You can have heartbreak. You can have legal consequences. You can have a loss of a good reputation. You can miss out on an opportunity. Say somebody comes in and with a job opportunity or that would align with you or lead to a greater experience, but because you don't want to leave your job because of fear, then you miss out on that opportunity because you didn't want to leave. So you waste a lot of time. Essentially. So what can we do? What can we do with this information? We understand how we, don't believe ourselves the first time. We understand that why we do it. We understand what it is. We understand the consequences of it. Now, what can we do to actually change this about ourselves? Begin developing a trusting relationship with your body. Start tuning into those little cues, because that way they don't have to be so loud, but you take them seriously. Begin develop that trusting relationship with your emotions, your heart, your thoughts, your bodily reactions. And then you slowly begin to build trust within yourself, between you and your inner child. So listening to your emotions is listening to yourself, is creating trust within yourself, is creating a whole new relationship to who you are. So start working on that today. Start every time you have an inkling, a thought, or something like that doesn't sit well with you, talk about it. If it's with a friend and you having like that first talk about it with them, especially if you feel like the relationship is worth it. Talk about it with them. Talk about it with your boss. Talk about your concerns. What is concerning you about the job? So communication is going to be another big way of believing yourself the first time, because you're showing yourself that, okay, I hear myself. I know that this is a problem. I know that this bothers me. I understand that this will be something that I'm going to continue to experience. So realizing that you are in a loop, awareness. And then have the conversation to make it better. Be that adult that your inner child is looking for. Do the mature thing, which is communicate and express yourself and take yourself seriously. Validate your emotions. Just because they may be extreme doesn't make them any less real, and doesn't make them any less impactful, and doesn't mean that you shouldn't do anything about it. This one's a little bit more tricky. But believing that your soul has your best interests. So I know some people don't necessarily believe in a higher power, We can talk about that in a second. But for those of us who believe in a higher power or believe that we have a soul, believe that your soul knows what it's doing. It knows the path that to get you to the place that you want to be at, and you have to trust it. So work on building trust with your soul. And one way to do that is to look back and through your past and say, like, every single time I've gone through something, I've overcome it. Every single thing that I've lived through, I've grown through it. It may have experienced something completely different that I didn't expect to experience, but it was something that actually I needed and led me to something greater. So look at past evidence of this in order to step into this trust. Now, if you don't necessarily believe in a higher power or believe in anything that's like spiritual about yourself, if you just feel like you are here in this body and that's it, then trust in your ability to say you do need to quit your job and you don't have something planned. Trust in your ability to be able to take care of yourself. Why? And then there's some shadow work there. If you don't feel capable of taking care of yourself, you don't feel capable of getting out here and making something happen for yourself, explore that. Ask yourself why. Why do I feel like if I don't have this job that I'm just going to lose it all? Why? What is it about this job, or what is it about yourself that you think is not able to actually take care of you? And start to build a trust within yourself that yes, you can do what's necessary to adhere to your needs and be able to actually take action behind that information. And the last thing that you can do, but certainly not, I won't say that this is the only thing, but it is the last thing on my list. So let me know in the comments below if you have another way of believing yourself the first time. The last thing that I'm going to say is taking the first step. You have to take the first step. Even if you have to hold your nose and just jump into that pool, take the first step and show yourself that you are serious about yourself. You got this, and you feel this way for a reason. If you aren't capable of taking that first step, it wouldn't even occur to you that this is something a situation that you shouldn't even be in. So you are more than capable and strong enough to actually do it. You just need to tap into that strength. Breathe. I will always tell y'all this. Breathe into your stomach. Breathe into your stomach, and you can do it and execute and just do it. Now, I'm not responsible for any of the fallout because I cannot guarantee that believing yourself the first time is going to be a pleasant experience. But I will say that it has the potential to being a better experience than what you're experiencing currently. You'll see how the world opens up for you once you take yourself seriously and you exit your loop. The world opens up and you start to see little doors opening and the next step and the next step and the next step. So do it to the level that you're comfortable with. But I'm here to tell you that it is possible it will be beneficial on the other side. It may take some time, but you will thank yourself later. Your future self will thank you. So now I want to say some caveats to believing yourself the first time in our internal feelings. So I had a friend ask me about this very situation, and he asked me, when he's under the influence, like say if he's out partying and maybe he's drunk or something, and he starts to feel a little bit of mistrust about the people that he's around. So if you start to feel that way, don't just start ending friendships because you think you're tapping into some type of knowing. You could very well be tapping into a knowing. Sometimes these, spirits and, spirits as in drinking alcohol, or, smoking weed can open your senses. For some people, not everybody. So don't be just getting drunk trying to contact spirits. But, for some people it does do that. But in these situations where if you're under the influence and you're tapping into some negative feelings, I say first explore that within yourself. See if that is some type of projection. See if that's coming from yourself. So if you're feeling mistrust, say you get high and you're mistrust, when you start to get paranoid about the people that are around you. But that might not necessarily mean that these people around you are bad people or they wish to do you harm or anything like that. It could be your own internal fears just coming up, and now you're projecting it on everybody that's around you. So explore that. If it is somebody that you care about, but you feel like you have a little bit of mistrust, or you feel like something's off, talk to them about it. Try to talk to them about it and see if your fears are unfounded. If you don't have that same inkling when you're sober, it's probably just because you're under the influence. But if you have the same inkling when you're sober, explore that. Then, I would say take that into account. But don't just believe yourself off the bat in this particular situation when you're under the influence, because that changes a whole bunch of chemistry in your body, and there's a lot of things that could be actually happening that's not necessarily telling you where your alignment is. It might just be telling you that you don't need to be doing these drugs and drinking alcohol. That might be really what's going on and what's trying to be communicated to you. So explore that. Still believe yourself the first time, but that means your actions will actually be a little bit different than from the standard loop. It's just more so like, I need to talk about this. I need to communicate. I need to make sure that this is not coming from me, and that I'm actually am getting reliable information from my environment. So, all right, y'all. I love y'all. I hope that this was helpful, and y'all start believing yourselves the first time. Y'all start believing your internal energy. You got this. I love y'all, and I will see y'all in the next video. Happy journeying.